Young ladies and gentlemen, tensions are rising between China and Japan. This affair that we thought that it was going to happen quickly, but it wasn't not the case. China has just threatened directly to Japan. Directly to Japan. China threatens to strike the Japan, properly speaking. Yes, because Japan is also in a game Taiwan's support. Everything revolves around Taiwan. Japan, which for a very long time was in a historical neutrality, now decided to abandon neutrality and to defend Taiwan. But the argument that is used by Japan to defend Taiwan, you understand exactly that the Japan is being pushed by the United States of America. Since the United States of America has an alliance of protection of Taiwan and then in the region, one of the most reliable allies of the United States happens to be Japan. And China, which has sworn that all power that would try to prevent him from to reclaim his territory, his province, which happens to be Taiwan. Now, Taiwan is a state today, and that this all power that is in the process of what to be done will be crushed. So China continues the fulfillment of his promise, and that is why he is a high-ranking official, the People's Liberation Army of China, who came out to make a statement resounding, and by which was also responded by the Japanese authorities. Things are heating up in the Asia-Pacific region. If we are not careful, soon a direct confrontation is about to erupt. So young ladies and gentlemen, within the framework of this video conference dedicated to current events global, it is of course of these current events that we are going to talk about. So as usual, right, before continue viewing this conference, I ask you for the share as much as possible. Put in a lot of like and don't forget to leave a review in the comments. If it's your first time stumbling upon my conference, click the button subscribe. This will ensure you never miss the news again, the hottest ones right now. Let's go. So, in the depths, ladies and gentlemen, it's a official warning. Official. The China is raising the clock. Japan is urged not to touch Taiwan. Taiwan is private property from China. So we shouldn't let the Japan borders Taiwan. So this is an official warning. Peckham warns of a crushing defeat from Japan in case Japan took this risk. The statement was made by the spokesman for the People's Army of Chinese Liberation, therefore PLA. This spokesperson states that all Japanese intervention in favor of Taiwan would be considered an act of war. If Japan intervenes militarily in favor of China, we'll consider this from Taiwan as being an act of war. And this war tactic will be answered when war is declared on you. You have the right to react. And that's why the China says this war tactic that will trigger in war between China and Japan. The defeat of Japan will be a crushing defeat. So here is what was said. If Japan dares to take this risk, it will suffer a crushing defeat against an army of steel. So it's the army spokesman, Chinese, who say her army is an army of steel that would suffer a crushing defeat at Japan. That means the waters are troubled on the other side. Relations between China and the Japan, if the army spokesman, Chinese, is pronounced like this, it means that we are not far from a conflict, a direct confrontation between China and Japan. But Japan don't back down. Japan won't give up. The preferential argument that is used by Japan, what is it? Japan says what to touch. If China touches in Taiwan, if Japan lets China interfere with Taiwan, is the very existence of Japan is under threat. Therefore, Japan considers the Chinese intervention on the island of Taiwan as a threat existential, and Japan is severely and seriously supported by Washington. So, the narrative, according to the narrative, Chinese military, Japan is accused to relieve its militarism of that era, imperial. And the strategic message is behind it. Beijing wants to disqualify that preventively any involvement Japanese in the Taiwan Straits, while China has already deployed a large warship, a large ship war in the Taiwan Strait. And the ship's approach to the island of Taiwan worries Japan and pushes the Japan has to make a decision. Japan, as China was threatened very recently, there is about 3 to 4 days ago, when Japan said that if this Chinese ship were to enter the Taiwanese waters, Japan was going to react since its very existence is threatened. So China is not threatening Taiwan. She threatens those who might be tempted to help because China considers already Taiwan as its property, private. And if something happens on its own territory, it is the question of sovereignty. Here is the mentality that China possesses. It must therefore be said that before that, Tokyo had made a statement. Japan made a statement. And the statement of the what is Japan is the first Japanese minister, Saitaka, who stated that if China attack on Taiwan, the very survival of Japan would be threatened. The very survival of Japan would be threatened. So Japan wants to do everything possible to prevent China from attacking Taiwan. And if China jumped by couch, especially to attack Taiwan, what is it? What will Japan do? Japan will to help Taiwan. Japan will riposte. But China is determined to strike at Taiwan. China is truly determined. And Japan is also determined not to let China do that to Taiwan. So we are as a prelude, right, to a confrontation direct. So the problem is that there are American guarantees that are granted in Tokyo. The United States supports implicitly Japan, Taiwan, which is part of the strategic red lines of Pacific. They don't want to leave. Taiwan is being attacked by China. However, it must also be said that tensions have risen by many of actions that have been taken by China, whether it be Chinese naval exercises, whether it's drones around the islands, Skanku, Jiu, there you go, and also, and above all, the Chinese warning to travelers to Japan. All we had to talk recently. So all these elements explain and expound the existence of a real tension in the region. So it's a shock strategic because Taiwan is becoming the Asia's explosion point. There you have it. A potential conflict, hey, is going to redraw the entire Pacific because that's not a small one conflict. We don't even want that is triggered. So the immediate risk, that's what happens if Japan intervenes militarily alongside Taiwan. The China will respond directly against the Japanese territory. China will strike Japanese territory. Is going to be Chinese missile strikes on Japanese military bases. Is going to be massive cyber attacks against Tokyo. And then it's going to be a naval blockade around Okinawa. There you go. This island. So then, ladies and gentlemen, that was it, the front page of the news. Thank you for the share as much as possible. I'll get back to you earlier with some news information. That was the voice of your humble servant, Robert.